I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today, I'm joined by Miss Jennie Marie Battistin. She is a renowned psychotherapist and Amazon best-selling author and is one of the first certified psychedelic assisted therapists in the United States with over 25 years of experience in healthcare. She is the visionary founder of Hope Therapy and Psychiatry Centers of California, where she and her team lead clients through trauma recovery, emotional healing, and rel relational restoration with depth, compassion, and evidence-based techniques. Her groundbreaking approach blends traditional therapy with multitude of different approaches. She brings her wisdom, stories, and strategies to help transform pain into power and live with greater depth, awareness, and connection. So, Jeannie, thank you so much for coming on, and I cannot wait to hear about this company and about this new way that you have the business that you've really blossomed from. So, I thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you so much.
So if you could introduce yourself a little bit more and share a little bit about what you do for a living.
Yeah, so I'm Jennie Marie, based in the greater Los Angeles area, and I became a licensed therapist in 2014. But for 20 years before that, I worked in various medical health settings, women's mental health, transplant services, and worked in a variety of just like lay counseling positions, crisis centers, working with new moms and what it's like to navigate that change and married couples. And it really kind of where I got my focus in initially with the idea of psychology was in high school years. I was a peer-to-peer counselor. And, I was always that friend that everyone would come to and go like, Jenny, what should I do? This boy just said this, or my parents are doing this, and so at school in high school they decided to start this whole peer-to-peer counseling. They said, oh hey, you want to do this, Jenny? Everyone comes to talk to you anyways. So I started out there and it all just blossomed. And 2014 opened my private practice, and now 11 years later we have 7 offices throughout California. I've got a team of over 30, including psychiatrists, nurse practitioners, a variety of different types of therapists. And we really work from a mental health recovery model that if you support clients in the right way with trauma-informed care, as well as the right therapeutic tools combined with maybe holistic support of supplements, helping to look at lifestyle factors, and even when needed, psychotropic medications, that people can maybe fully mentally recover and feel happy, healthy, and suffer less with their symptoms.
So share a little bit more with me about how you got into the psychedelics and how that has actually been a main part of your career.
Yeah, so this was really interesting because of course when I was in graduate school, and even if you go back to when I was in the 80s when I was in school, we were all hearing about the war on drugs and drugs are bad, and part of that was psychedelics. I can remember people saying like, "Oh, you never want to go to a psychedelic. You're going to think you're going to fly and you're going to jump off buildings. It's dangerous. It's bad, 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 bad." But I think it was in 2014. I had a client that I was working with that just had extremely deep, deep, deep depression, had tried every medication that was out there, was in and out of hospitals, chronically suicidal. And over about a 3 week period of time, I had this very different client that was showing up in my office. And I was like, this is interesting. I mean, I know I'm a good therapist, but I've been working with you for a while, and in 3 weeks, you've kind of made like these big breakthroughs, these, new ways of thinking. Your anxiety seems to just be falling off of you. What do you think the difference is about? And the client got really quiet and was kind of looking down. And I was like, safe space. And he was hesitant, but he's like, well, I did a thing. And I'm like, okay, safe space. And he's like, well, I did some ketamine. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think my eyes bugged out because I was like, ketamine. Immediately, I was taken back to in high school. We would talk about ketamine, but it was a horse tranquilizer. And I'm thinking, oh no. And I had just sent this client to recovery for alcohol abuse and was thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to send him now to drug recovery. What is this? And he's like, real quickly was, no, 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 no. It's a medical treatment. And I was like, a medical treatment? What do you mean? And he explained he went to this clinic and they hooked up an IV, and he had this experience, and he was having that experience the day before our appointment. So he would come in and he would have new insights. And he left my appointment, and I was like, I've got to look this up. Is this really a medical treatment? And so I did a deep dive into the internet and found all this amazing research that was going on in the field of psychedelics, found out about all this information that was kind of underground during that time of war on drugs. And so that's what really prompted me to, was really because a client, had a miraculous change. And so then I started researching and started getting trained. And that's what kind of brought me to psychedelics, which it was initially really hard for me to imagine, talking to a client about something that was so often seen in traditional initial schooling as like, this is evil, this is bad, this is not good, this is dangerous. And it really is changing so many of my clients' lives. And working with our psychiatric team, we have many clients that have been able to, fully heal and recover and reset their minds. And many of them are now, able to taper off their actual traditional psychotropic prescribed medicines and just taking supplements. And it really is pretty miraculous.
Yeah, you always hear in school about how these drugs are so bad for you, like ketamine, and some people use like medical cannabis and all this stuff. And we're always taught that, marijuana and all these harsh drugs that, that are used in these treatment methods are bad for you. They leave and have numerous effects on them. Have you seen any drugs that people say that have helped, like they've come to you and they've said, "Oh, I'm trying this," and a doctor said this, and then and then from your professional knowledge, you're thinking this is not the best medicine that you need to be taking.
Yeah, I mean it's challenging because like if we go with traditional pharmaceutical drugs, so many times it's start a medication, let's see if in 2 weeks it's made a difference. Oh, it's not made a difference. Let's increase that. Let's see how you're doing 2 weeks later. Oh, that's not making a difference. Oh, let's add another drug in. Oh, now you've got this side effect, so let's add this other drug in. Oh, that none of that seems to be working. Let's take you off those. Let's try these other ones. In the midst, people are really suffering. And so, while there absolutely is a benefit when people are in crisis at times for psychotropic drugs, and I would never want to dissuade someone of not taking those if those have been prescribed, especially because I'm not a medical doctor. I can't advise them to stop those medications. But I think it's important to be informed, to ask questions, and to find out with your doctor, is there a way for this to be a short-term course if I'm actually going prescription medications? If we're talking about recreationally utilizing these more advanced psychedelic medications, I think it really is important for people to understand that they still are medications. Yes, if we're taking a mushroom, it's a plant substance, but these are medicinal products and they need to be used responsibly and in safe environments and safe settings, so that you're not causing potentially harm to yourself. So I think that that's really important, and that you're understanding what you're taking, where you're getting those medicines from. And when we talk about psychedelic medicines, we talk about set and setting, which is really important. And that set and setting is, what's your mindset going in to utilizing these medicines? Why are you using these medicines? If you're just trying to escape suffering, you're probably going to end up with suffering. People talk about bad trips, and that's where I see people coming to me as they had a bad trip. And it was really, they were trying to escape suffering, and so they didn't set a mindset for going in and using these medications responsibly and with the right mindset and the right support. And then the second part of using psychedelics is setting. So who's the person that's going to be present there, supporting you and helping you understand the material, the information, the insights that are coming up as you take this medicine. Because otherwise suffering can come more after you use psychedelics. So you do have to be responsible with these, just, even if you're going with something that would be a plant-based. Of course, if you're doing something that's like ketamine, you're going to want to do that in a medical setting. This is a medical drug. It needs to be prescribed by a medical doctor, it needs to be overseen by a medical team. You should never get street ketamine because that's not going to be safe in any manner.
In your bio, you actually had mentioned about this thing that you do in Mexico. You go on these little psychedelic retreats. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you learn and what you do on these retreats in Mexico?
Yeah, so this is really fun. So when I decided to go get certified in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, it was a 1 year long fellowship. And when I went in, I started to learn about ayahuasca and DMT and peyote and San Pedro and psilocybin and morning glory and LSD and all these other medications. And of course, here in the United States, those are, not decriminalized yet. In some places they are, like Oregon, Colorado. Some cities have started to decriminalize some of these medicines. But, for the most part, they're not decriminalized. Yes, sometimes you can get them in a church sacrament setting. So I was like, okay, well, where can I go to work with these medicines? Because I was limited in California. We only have ketamine. And so this is why I went out of the country. I went to Mexico. I sat with 17 different indigenous medicine individuals. And primarily that was because I really felt like I wanted to honor that these medicines were used by indigenous cultures. I wanted to understand how they saw them as a sacrament, how they were using those in proper settings. I didn't want to go in and try to create a ceremony when I am not indigenous myself. So I went to Mexico, sat with 17 people, found the woman that I work with now, Ishka. She's amazing, beautiful, and she's very knowledgeable and working with all these different medicines. And so, and then we have a link with a couple of tribes in Mexico that we actually source our medicines from, so that it's, we know it's pure, it's clean medicine, it's safe medicine, as well as we have some individuals who actually brew medicines like ayahuasca for us. And so going down to Mexico, gosh, if I could be down there all the time, I would. We have a beautiful resort that we work with just north of Cancun. It's this house right on the white sand beaches, and it's just such a beautiful location, a very healing location. There's something about the Mayan lands that just feel very ancient and healing. And so we go there and we serve medicine, and we talk about the insights and really kind of think of leaving, if we can, behind in a traditional fire setting, some of the narratives, some of the beliefs that really are not serving us. And so it's just been really a beautiful, beautiful experience to go down there and work with indigenous people that have been the holders of these medicines for, centuries.
When it comes to trauma recovery, tell me a little bit about how you approach trauma recovery and what methods you have found to be the most helpful.
Yeah, so trauma recovery is a different process for everyone. Some individuals really will notice that they hold that in their body, and it can manifest in ways of they have chronic pain, they have autoimmune conditions. So we really kind of look at, like, how is the body responding to all this trauma? What are the signals that your body is giving you that there is stored trauma? So we have maybe some very clear signs. Someone may be suffering from physical ailments. Some individuals just have symptoms that, are maybe not so somatically held. They're having more anxiety, low mood, excessive worrying that's happening for them. In worst cases, they might be having panic attacks or even avoiding going to certain places. So really taking a good history and understanding what's happening for that individual in their day-to-day life. How do they feel like they are able to show up in their life? Are there things that they're avoiding because it does cause more anxiety, or they feel they can't be motivated in those situations? And then carefully constructing what would be helpful for us to look at first and understand first. But before I kind of go into that, I like to talk about helping them build resources of coping. So what can we do if we start working on some of this trauma and it feels very activated and overwhelming? How can you kind of take care of yourself and calm your body, calm your mind, care for yourself? Are there individuals that we can resource that would be available, that after therapy session, you can go visit your friend so and so, who's a really calming source, a very supportive source? Or can you go walk in a park that feels very soothing, calming? Can you go get a cup of tea? Can you go home and take a bath? Can you go to a yoga class? What can you do for yourself that will care for yourself when we work through processing a traumatic event or traumatic experiences that have happened throughout your life, so that it doesn't re-traumatize you? And then depending on the client, there's a couple different modalities we work with. We work with a couple techniques. Many people have heard of EMDR, stands for eye movement reprocessing desensitization. This is a process of recalling the events of the traumatic experience or the negative beliefs that have come out of those experiences. And as we're considering those, we think of how distressing do these make us? And then we move into a reprocessing. And reprocessing can happen by either clients will hold some tappers that can be very soothing in the hands. They vibrate in each hand, or a light bar where a light kind of dances back and forth that they follow, or even following fingers across the screen, or if they're here with me in person. And through that, we're actually accessing different parts of the brain that's been holding this trauma, and allowing, in a very safe, contained space of working with a therapist that you feel connected with, to really kind of understand those experiences that they happened. They're not happening today, but understanding how those impacted you, and to be able to release negative beliefs or narratives that you've built in your life because of those traumas, and to maybe be able to move into a place of holding new beliefs about oneself. So if you're thinking, I'm not capable because some traumatic experience happened. If you can look at that in a different way, and it's like moves to a place of, I know this experience happened, but it doesn't have as strong of a hold on me anymore. It doesn't activate me anymore in the same way. And I'm able to see it kind of separate and distant from me. And now I can embrace that maybe I am capable. I am a good person. I am a loving person. I matter, and I can trust the right people in my life. And so being thoughtful about how we work through that trauma and the material associated with it and how quickly is very important, along with building safe ways of coping with distress.
Do you find it possible to have a full mental health recovery, or is there a chance that people can't? Is there a chance that they can't reach that full potential?
Yeah, so I think that mental health recovery looks different for every person. And the way that we kind of look at that is, are you able to show up in your life in new ways? Are you able to manage stressors in new ways? Are you able to feel like, okay, I'm able to focus on the things that are important. I'm able to interact in relationships in new ways that I don't feel as activated. I'm able to go out and achieve maybe some manageable goals that were before maybe I was crippled in a sense of, I can't do that. I just, the fear, the worry, the anxiety, the depression just stopped me. And so now I'm actually able to do those things. And, for some individuals, mental health recovery looks like, okay, now I've moved through and I've been able to taper off of prescription medications, and I have other resources that I rely on, supplements, a good exercise, a good sleep routine. I've built community supports. I've developed a sense of purpose and meaning in my life. I'm no longer weighed down by guilt or shame or, old resentments that kept me stuck in my life. And I'm able to build new narratives about myself and see myself. And there's where we start to see that we're kind of in more of a mental health recovered state.
Tell us about your books that you have published that's directed for teens. Tell me a little bit about how you came up with these books and what you want people that read them for, especially for teenagers. What's the main takeaway you would like for them to take from the book?
Yeah, so the books are really interesting in that one of my first experiences as a therapist is I was placed on a high school campus, which at first I was terrified about, like, what am I going to say to a teenager? I was in my early 30s at that point, and someone just said, hey, just have a conversation with them. Just consider having a conversation. So I kind of like entered into that. And I think often what I encountered with those teenagers was, oh, people never really have interest in understanding my world, how I see the world. And you're actually spending some time and having a conversation with me, and you're not trying to lecture me or talk me out of things. You're just trying to understand how I see things. And in working with many of the teens, I found that they felt anxious, overwhelmed, they were having difficulty concentrating. And many of them just didn't understand what to do with all these emotions that I was experiencing. And they were engaging in patterns of coping that were really trying to distract away and not really process, like, what do I do with all these feelings? So I began teaching them a little bit about mindfulness, and mindfulness helps us to be present in the moment without judgment. And so often I think we often run to judgment. I mean, look at everything that often is on social media. We see someone, a beautiful model on a social media, and we immediately turn towards and criticize ourselves or judge ourselves. Well, why don't I look like that? And so helping teens to really be present in the day non-judgmentally, as well as non-judgmentally of their peers. I mean, on campuses, we see that there's a huge problem with bullying that occurs because we're making fun of others and judging others, which can be so harmful and hurtful. And unfortunately, we're seeing increased suicide that has happened on campuses because kids are bullied and judged so harshly. And so mindfulness really helps us take a step away from that. So out of that, over a period of time, I started developing different mindfulness activities, and research started to back up that individuals who engage in mindfulness, that within 30 days their mental health seemed to improve. Anxiety scores went down, depression scores went down, as well as individuals started to report that their memory was improved, their concentration was improved. So I really started to talk to my teens like, if you can engage with a little mindfulness practice, just even 2 to 3 minutes a day, you probably will find you will do better on tests. You'll be able to concentrate on getting your homework done quicker. And they're like, really? Get better grades and I'll get done with homework quicker? Okay, I might give it a try. And I was like, let's do a 30-day challenge. Let's just pick these exercises that I've created, try them for the next 30 days, and let's see what happens. And over again, my teenagers were telling me that they not only were scoring better on their tests, but they also reported they felt less anxious, they felt less overwhelmed, and they felt more engaged in life. So out of that, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll write a book. And so I wrote a book, Mindfulness for Teens in 10 minutes a day. Doesn't really need to be 10 minutes, but if I can get someone to engage in 10 minutes, I just see you get a bigger multiplication factor of the benefits. It's a book filled with 60 different exercises, so there's something for everyone. There's morning exercises, there's midday exercises, there's evening exercises. They're kind of cute. Maybe older teens might roll their eyes at some of my names of the exercises, but my younger teens love it. And I find that parents actually love it too. And so a lot of times my teens will get their parents involved in doing the exercises with them. And they're just fun.
What advice do you have for people if someone's listening and they maybe want to try a psychedelic drug for the first time, but they don't know where to start? What advice do you have for them on how they can appropriately and smartly do psychedelic drugs for the first time?
Yeah, so I would definitely encourage you to look in your community and find someone, a practitioner that is trained. Ideally, if you're gonna go to a therapist, you want to find someone who actually has done a certification training, not someone who's just on their own, gone and had an experience, because I see that a lot in our field that's starting to emerge. People have gone, they've had an experience, they've had a good experience, which is great. And then they think, oh, I want to help others with that, but they really don't have the depth of the training to really understand and help someone integrate and make sense of that experience. So you do want to work with someone who maybe has gone through a certification program, has done some extensive training in how to sit with an individual, as well as you need to really understand your local laws and whether or not, I can actually utilize, if I'm going to use something that is like a psilocybin, a mushroom, is that allowed where I am? And if it's not, can I travel to where that's allowed? So there's centers of treatment in Oregon and in Colorado that you can go to that are licensed, facilitated facilities, and you're working with licensed facilitators as well. And so a lot of times these are mental health practitioners that are actually licensed clinicians, but there are some actual facilitators. They aren't licensed mental health providers, but they're facilitators who have done extensive training and understand these medicines and understand how to help you make sense of these. Because the last thing you want is to go and have an experience and for it to be a bad trip, a challenging trip that you don't understand. And it actually causes you to feel more anxious afterwards. We definitely don't want that. They have great potential, but they need to be used wisely and they need to be used in the presence of someone who understands them.
People might have additional questions about this and maybe probably didn't get answered. Where can people, if they have questions or would like to maybe look into your research work and would like to maybe try this new method, where can they best find you? And feel free to promote your business as well as your social media accounts where people can find you and connect with you.
Yeah, so I'm Hope Therapy Center. We're based in California. You can find us on our website, which is hope-therapy-center.com. We're on Instagram. We're hope_therapy_center. Um, I'm on TikTok at Jennie Marie Says. Um, and Facebook, we're Hope Therapy Center all together. Uh, and you can also find someone who maybe understands psychedelic medicine if you're interested with that. Looking at psychedelics today is a good resource for finding practitioners who are experienced in working with psychedelics.
As I always do, I'll put all of her links in the description below. I'll put her social media accounts, and I will also put her website down there for the Hope Therapy Center, so that it's easy access for everyone to where you don't have to go browsing on the internet for long. And I'll put links in there as well to where you can actually click on it from the description box, and it'll take you right to the said link. You can also follow me on social media as well to keep updates on this. Instagram and TikTok at Lethal Venom Podcast, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. And as always, feel free to subscribe to Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcasts from. It's on all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. It's everywhere, so feel free to check those out and make sure to follow along so that you get notified of when new episodes come out. Thank you so much, Jeannie, for coming on and sharing this new method with my audience. I'm a huge advocate for people that have mental health, and I always am always looking for new ways for people maybe that had never heard of this. This will be a beneficial for them. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with me and sharing this wonderful program with my audience.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much, Noah. It's been a pleasure. It's been a joy. And may you all have a bright day.
As she said, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day and week. I'll be safe out there, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Lethal Venom.